A lot of people in time seem to argue that freedom is something that should be considered in the mind or the soul, something about having complete control. That for some reason, a lot of people are thinking of freedom as control, as being like the dictator of your experience, of having no influences in your life, of being like the source of all decisions, of being the source of all direction in your life. It's even difficult to say because the whole concept of this freedom that a lot of people throughout history have been talking about is completely and utterly misrepresented. It's when we're thinking of freedom, freedom is when you're being controlled without any kind of. So freedom is like if you're a slave, you're not free. If you have chains or if you're facing threats, like if you want to go, if you desire to go in a certain direction, or if you desire something and you absolutely can't have it no matter what because of an external force that is taking that option away from you, that's what not having freedom is. So a lot of people are thinking of freedom as this weird, odd, abstract concept of being like the sole dictator of your reality, like being a god. But they rarely ever think of the other way around of what does it mean not to be free? And if you think of slavery, if you have chains, if you're being threatened or coerced, if if your choices are limited by threats or violence or drugs, those are the kinds of things that are taking your freedom away, right? So really what freedom is just having options and being able to pursue those options without somebody else being able to decide at their own whim whether or not they can take it away from you. So option freedom is like having a menu. Freedom isn't the choice of what you choose on the menu. It's being able to choose anything on the menu is freedom. When it's not freedom is when you have a menu, but you're only free to choose 2 or 3 items from the menu because somebody has a gun to your head, or because you don't have enough money, or because somebody is coercing or influencing your actions in an unfair way. So in that way, freedom is also connected to fairness. And that has to be what freedom really is, because if you try to get into these like theological depths of like whether God is influencing our choices or not, or everything is predetermined, at that point it starts to really not matter whether or not that's even freedom at all, because you can exist without, just because those things don't really when there's nothing you can do about it, like really nothing you can do, like when you can't even put your hands on it or interact it or try to fight it, and all you can do is stress about it, then it doesn't really matter. If it's not like another person in the world, when it's not somebody holding a gun to your head, if another human being is holding a gun to your head and saying you can only choose the grilled cheese sandwich, you can only choose the beef sandwich. When someone's holding a gun to your head and telling you that, here's a menu, there's 30 items on the menu, but if you choose anything other than the beef sandwich, I'm going to shoot you. And in fact, they won't even let you order. Even if you try to order something else, they'll shoot you in the leg, and then they'll point the gun at the person taking your order, and they'll take the beef sandwich. and then they'll stick duct tape on your mouth so that you can't say anything or do anything about it. Or they'll stick an electrode in your spine and your brain, and they'll get a microphone out and they'll speak into it, and they'll say, I'll take the beef sandwich, and then that's played through your electrode, and then you, for some reason, against your will, even though in your mind you're thinking, I don't want the beef sandwich, I want the whatever else is there, I want the hamburger, the cheeseburger, or whatever, I don't want the beef sandwich. But for some reason what comes out of your mouth is, I'll take the beef sandwich. Okay, but that's different than this freedom that they've been talking about with like in theology and all these other things, where, because your desires are aligned with your choices when it comes to, like, if God, or if a Greek god is choosing something for you, your desires are aligned. Like, what you want is aligned with your choices still. So it doesn't really matter, because that's what freedom really is when you're, like, aligned with yourself, when you can do things based on what you want to do, or what you feel like you want to do, what you believe you want to do, right? That's about as far as freedom can really go, because once you go past that, there's you can't do anything about it. Like, no matter how aware you are, even if there was God that was even if there was a God that was predetermining your choices, and you were aware of that, it wouldn't change anything. You wouldn't, like, struggle against it or anything. And even if you did, or even if you tried to struggle, because of the idea of predeterminism, all of those struggles would already have been predetermined. You know, God would have already chosen all of those struggles for you. God would have already. So when it comes to freedom, like, none of that shit even matters. Like, none of those ideas even matter. So all that really matters is whether or not someone else has a gun to your head. You know, if they put illegal implants in you and have taken your choices away, you know, if there are options that you don't get to choose because somebody else has taken those choices away from you, you know, that's taking away your freedom. That's really one of the only things that freedom can be, because those are the only things that can actually be done about it. I mean, not that you can do something about it, because if you're a slave, you probably can't do anything about being a slave. Even if you try to stand up for yourself and fight back, you're probably going to get beat down, which is probably why you're a slave. It's because somebody's unfairly used their power against you. But the fact is that there's somebody else on the planet, there's another human being or another group of humans who could free you, who could fight your captor, or the person unfairly taking your choices away, taking your freedom away, who is forcing you to disalign from you as an individual person and your survival, your choices of what benefits yourself from your belief system. You know, there's somebody else who could do something about it. But if it's God, then there's nobody who can do anything about that at all. So that doesn't even really matter in terms of freedom, and there's no reason to even really consider it, because if things like God gave you free will and stuff even matter, well, if you're thinking about, like, if God gave you free will, then it still doesn't even matter at that point, because then you technically, you know, then you still have all the other parts of freedom that I discussed, whether or not somebody has a gun to your head or not, you know. And then you get things like if possession is real or not, because if possession is real, then your freedom can be taken away even if God gave you freedom, or God is getting you possessed, and then you never had freedom, etc., etc. So what I'm saying is that the whole idea of freedom that people have been talking about for so long has always been fake. What freedom really is being able to align with yourself. It's whether or not your stream can flow, or if somebody's building a dam in your stream to take advantage of your resources for themselves. That's what freedom is. And that's what it really kind of has to be, whether or not there are gods and predeterminism and stuff. But that means that we technically have a freedom, even if determinism without gods, even if not predeterminism, not the theology version, but determinism, but just being like part of physics, whether that's real or not. And then the other questions are like, well, if freedom doesn't really exist, see, that's what people are saying. Does freedom really exist or not? Well, in a sense, like we have to, because we can't let people do terrible things to each other and make the world a worse place and then make it a worse place for everybody, because then we're all going to suffer, because we do suffer and we experience suffering and we know it feels bad and we don't want it and we're pushed away from it. Even if it's temporary, it can still affect us for the rest of our lives, and we still want, people still want to be rewarded for doing things. People still want punishments, they still want revenge. So this idea of freedom being, without God, with or without a God, doesn't really matter. What matters is, well, freedom really only matters in the context of justice and like legal terms and fairness. That's really the only time that freedom actually matters. And I was just studying freedom in a philosophy textbook, and I've read philosophy stuff on freedom before. So this isn't just random rantings. This is me with like a now newly educated, freshly educated opinion on freedom, having read a textbook on freedom, a philosophy textbook, which dove into different theologies and different philosophies and stuff. And with the information that I already have in my head, plus the new information that I just received from the textbook, that's what I'm saying is freedom doesn't matter if there's a God, doesn't matter if there's determinism, predeterminism. None of that matters in freedom, because we can't change that stuff. There's nothing we can do about that. We can't affect God, because we can't do anything to God. We can't modify God. We can't modify the law.